What's up, everybody? My name is Shannon, and I am still waiting for my Satyr, and today we are talking about the last book in the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, Victory's Price by Alexander Freed. I have been thinking a lot about how I wanted to do this video because, I'll just cut to the chase. This book is not bad. It is a good book, but it was very triggering to me on a lot of levels. I went into this book knowing that it probably wasn't going to be a good idea for me to read it, but I was like, you know what? I'm going into it with low expectations anyway, like it's going to be fine. And even though I was preparing myself for the worst, and the worst didn't exactly happen, I still somehow didn't prepare myself enough for what was still going to happen. So I think what we're going to do here is, if you clicked onto this video, you wanted spoiler free. My thing is, if you have already read, the other two books in this trilogy, and you are enjoying it so far, then yes, I would recommend definitely continuing out this series, because I think Alexander Freed does tell a really special story with the members of Alphabet Squadron. I loved the ending. I definitely think the epilogue was really good. I was glad that it was there. He did stick the landing. But I will say I am giving this book a C- because I feel like he was a little bit tone deaf when it came to how heavy the book was hitting. And part of me recognizes that that was probably the intent. It was meant to be really heavy. It was meant to feel really hopeless and all of that. But it was just very difficult to get through. And I will also put a little note that if you are or have ever been or have ever had a personal experience with suicide, I would skip this entire trilogy altogether. So with that being said, I want to talk about my main things with this. So when I read the first book in the Alphabet Squadron series, when I read Alphabet Squadron, it was fine. It was okay. It wasn't really for me. I think Alexander Freed is not really, his style of writing isn't really my favorite. He is very detail oriented. He does a lot of battles, a lot of, that kind of stuff. So it's not really for me. Now, I did like when he did the novelization for Rogue One, which I definitely think you see translated a lot into here, but there were parts of that book that I liked. I loved Erica. I loved Chas. I loved learning about them. I liked seeing this group come together. Did I skim a lot of it? Of course I did. It was a little bit of a slog to get through. Going into the next book, I was, I was kind of looking forward to it. I was like, you know what? I kind of liked these characters. Maybe I'm going to enjoy this book. And I really did not enjoy that book. And the problem is that was the darker middle chapter for sure. It was supposed to feel like that. And by the end of it, it was supposed to feel hopeless. We have Erica returning to the Empire. We have a lot of stuff that happened with Chas. And yes, I am mostly talking about those two characters and not the other three, because that's where my interests lie. And the thing that started to get me was Chas in particular. She's a really cool character. She is obsessed with Jyn Erso, but she's obsessed with her in a way that is really unhealthy. And it's that Jyn Erso is a martyr. She died and basically saved the hope of the rebellion. And that's what Chas wants. She doesn't believe that there is a future for her beyond this war. So when the war inevitably ends, it would be better if she died in the fighting, and she wants to go out in a blaze of glory. And that's suicidal. She has, she's fantasizing about committing suicide and killing herself and going out in this huge blaze of glory. And that was already kind of oh, okay. But when handled well, I think it could have been really interesting. But in the second book, she gets separated from her squadron. She goes through a lot of heavy stuff. She joins a cult that basically tells her that everything is pointless and meaningless. And she loses every vestige of herself. And I was like, she's gonna die in the next book. I could feel it in my bones. I'm like, she's gonna get her wish and she's gonna die in the next book. So going into Victory's Price, that's what I was preparing myself for. I was 100% prepared for that to happen. And as the story goes on, I kept noting to myself, I was taking notes for this because originally we were going to talk about it on Lipstick and Lightsabers. I do not think I'm quite prepared to do that. But I was taking notes, and I kept noting that it just felt so hopeless. It made me feel very emotionally drained every time I would read a chunk of this book. And it the only thing I could compare it to is The Rise of Skywalker. Watching that movie, especially on a second viewing, I just felt really empty and really hollow, and nothing mattered. And that's how I felt reading this book. I definitely think there was a lot of cool things going on with Erica's side of the story, with redeeming the Empire. Basically her side is dedicated to, they find out that Soren Pease, who is like her commander, he's in charge of Shadowwing and all of that, knows about this huge database that has like basically everybody who's ever worked for the Empire. And if that were to get into New Republic hands, then everybody is going to be hunted down regardless of what kind of crime they committed, because everybody who worked for the Empire is inherently guilty. And that was very interesting. That was really cool. And he was going to go to Coruscant, he was going to blow it up, he was going to kill all these people, and seeing Erica go and confront him and like seeing like what they were dealing with, like morally, like, do we even want the New Republic to have this? Like, do we want to destroy it but not kill everybody? Like, that was very interesting. And then to also see somebody like Erica, who has gone through so much and basically by the end of the second book was like, I can never be redeemed. I have done such horrible things, like with Operation Cinder, with killing so many people, that maybe I'm destined to die as well. Maybe I should be condemned to this death as well. And to see by the end of this book, to see her judged and forgiven was very special. But what got me was, again, Chas, because Chas does go through this book. She's very angry. She wants, revenge. She's like angry at Yrica for abandoning her. She's angry at her for like keeping all of these things from her. And they get separated again. And Chas is flying in the final battle. Like this series goes all the way up to Jakku, which is just like Lost Stars. It's just like Aftermath. It goes all the way up to like the Empire finally falling. And she's fighting in this fight, and she realizes that she doesn't want to die. She realizes that she wants to live, like she wants to be alive, and that even though she can't imagine a future that is good for her, and like she knows that it could be a living nightmare and that it would be better for her to die, she doesn't want to die. She wants to live. She wants to have the choice to build a life. And like that to me is like what this series is about. It's about having that choice at the end of everything. And right when she has that thought, her ship blows up. And it blows up basically like, ending the war. She was like saving a whole bunch of people, and then it's left very ambiguous as to whether she lived or died. The fact that it did leave that question indicated to me that she was probably alive, but you do spend several chapters like not really knowing what happened to her. Part of me feels like I'm taking it too personally, or I'm being too sensitive, because she didn't die. She didn't commit suicide. Like she got to have her blaze of glory, but then survive at the end of it. And you see in the epilogue that her and Yrica are together, like they're happy, they're living their life. Like the epilogue really is great. But it's so upsetting to me that she realized she wanted to live and then just blows up. Like that is so heavy, and I don't think it was handled with the care that it needed. To me, a better way for her to go would have been like Will's side of the story, because Will, has been talking a lot to the Empire. He talks a lot to the other TIE pilots, and he has kind of like a showdown with one of them at the end. I think that would have been better. I think it would have been better for Chas to be confronted with somebody from the opposite side, or somebody else who was suicidal, somebody else who wanted to die, and for her to save them, for her to say, you know what, like life is worth living. That would have meant so much more. It makes me really mad. I just feel like Alexander Freed hit on a lot of good things. I do think this was a special story, but it's very upsetting to me, and it put me in a really bad headspace. Anytime I have encountered anything in media, I'm always very wary of how it is approached, and I definitely don't think Alexander Freed did the best job with it. I don't think, looking at it objectively, I think it's fine. Like this book was still good. I think it had a better outcome than I was expecting, but I cannot separate those feelings from this book. And so because of that, I regret ever reading this entire series. I really wish I hadn't read it at all, to be perfectly honest. I think if it, like in hindsight, to anybody looking at this series, I would say if you think this is going to be triggering to you, don't read it. Just read the epilogue at the very end of Victory's Price. I definitely think there's a lot of cool theorizing that you can get out of this. There's a lot of interesting things to be said about the war. This was a very realistic war story, and to me, that's not what Star Wars is. Star Wars to me is about hope, and this book was completely hopeless from start to finish. It had a hopeful, good ending, but there was never any, like, this bit of hope that you could hold on to as you were reading this book. And to me, that is just such a shame. So I'm very happy to be done with this. I'm happy to like just not ever talk about it ever again. I can't deal with it anymore. So like I said, I don't recommend this series at all. I would give it a C-. I don't think it's bad. I think they were, well written. I think the story was very interesting, but I don't think it had the care that it deserved to have. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit that like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe to Talk Books with me every week. That is everything I got for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!